Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I wanted to start this off by saying thank you for all the support I got in the last video, and yeah, I really appreciate it, and I'm glad I could help some of you, um, and that's all I wanted to say. Uh, Now, this video idea is basically going to be a Frost rework concept, and without further ado, let's get into it. So, first things first, let me go over all Frost's current abilities as they are now, starting with his passive. His passive, essentially, an enemy has a 10% chance when they hit you with a melee attack, you can freeze them. Like, they just get frozen. It's a 10% chance. This is a really bad passive, if I'm being honest. First ability, freeze. Basically, you throw a snowball and it freezes guys, and it has like an AoE damage effect to it. But basically, the person you throw it at is the only one that gets frozen. And that's essentially how the ability works. Ice Wave. You make a wave of icicles, essentially, and it does damage. That's the ability. Snow Globe. You make a bubble around you that protects you from damage, and you're allowed to shoot out of it. However, enemies are not allowed to shoot into it. If you wish to destroy the Snow Globe, you cast Freeze on it to blow it up, and it will do slight damage to enemies nearby it. Avalanche. Avalanche freezes enemies, does a bit of damage, and will armor strip. And this is objectively his best ability. Now, with the explaining portion over, I would like to get into my build with Frost. So, this is the build that I use to clear Steel Path with him. This is a very, it's a reliable build. However, don't expect to be like soloing Steel Path. You might want to bring someone with you to kind of pick up your slack. With that being said, he is really good overall. He's just not as good as he could be. He's probably like a C tier character, maybe B tier if you want to argue. But yeah, this is my build. So we have Physique. You can literally swap this out for anything if you want to like reform of this for whatever build purpose you have. Brief Respite could go here, so you can double gate with this build if you want. That's cool. Cunning Drift. We run this for the range. Which we pair it with Stretch, which gives us that 160 range. It's plenty of range for Frost. We have Continuity for our durations. The reason why we have the durations is because we want enemies to be frozen as long as possible. That's the reason why we run our durations, so that's why it's here. Flow. Frost has really bad energy, like his base energy. If we, say we remove this for, this or something like that. As you'll see, 150 energy is horrible. Why is his energy this low? You couldn't have gave him 200, 250. This is just really low energy. So, where'd it go? Oh, there it is. Okay. Anyways, so yeah, we are running flow. I would highly recommend getting Prime Flow if you do not have it. It's kind of mandatory for this build, if we're being honest. Rolling Guard. Sometimes your shield breaks. Sometimes your overguard breaks. So we need something to keep us alive while that's gone. And also, if we need a way to quickly get rid of a status effect, we have this. So that's that. That's the reason why we have it. Blind Rage is our only strength mod. We don't really need too much strength on Frost to get him to work. Now, of course, if you want, you can run, like some like red arcane shards. Arcane shards? What? Archon shards. For that extra strength if you just want to make him strong, but he does not need that much strength. He doesn't. Energy Nexus goes back to that whole thing with flow. He doesn't have a whole lot of energy, and because we're running Blind Rage with a low efficiency, we need some way to kind of counteract the heavy drain on him, because he can't just hoard a bunch of energy because of his energy cap. Now we have two augments for his last two abilities. I didn't go over his augments just yet, but these augments are very important to this build. Icy Avalanche, basically whenever you use your 4, it armor strips them, they're frozen, all that. But this will allow you to get overguard off those enemies, effectively making him somewhat tanky. And this also applies to his allies who are nearby. So yes, this is a very strong augment, arguably his best one. The only other one is this augment. Basically, frozen enemies take more damage and more crit. Now, this augment is strong in its own right. However, it could be stronger. It's not necessary to run. You could actually just run whatever else you want here. If you wanted to, you could probably like slap on, say, like equilibrium or something like that. But I like this mod, and with my rework idea, this mod becomes goated. Now, arcanes, literally, I just have these here because they're maxed out. These are basically not relevant. So I want to get into his augments before we continue with the rework. So this augment, as previously stated, crit chance, crit damage on enemies who are frozen. And this only applies to Frost, no one else. And that's pretty good. I actually really like this augment. I like it a lot. Freeze. So this augment will allow you to grant cold stacks to your allies on their weapons. Now, this is a pretty bad augment. However, with my rework idea, this could actually be a consideration. His second augment, Ice Wave. So this essentially leaves a cold trail on the enemies that it's hit by. This should just be built into Ice Wave naturally. I don't know why this is an augment. This makes no sense. If we made this like an actual, just straight up how the ability worked in the first place, great. Now, Chilling Globe, basically you get a 50% chance on whether or not an enemy who steps into your snow globe immediately, freezes. And that's pretty bad because it's a 50% chance that doesn't, scale with strength or whatever. It stays a static 50% chance, which makes no sense because this should just be built into his kit. The only enemies who are getting frozen by this are melee enemies. I'm sorry if you guys can hear my cat. So, melee enemies are the only ones who even dare to step into, Frost Snow Globe, because everyone else just shoots at it, right? So they'll deal with it from range. However, because melee enemies are the only ones to deal with this, allowing this not to scale with strength and getting to a 100% chance to immediately be frozen if they step into it just seems like a misfire to me. Like, why? Now, Icy Avalanche, as previously mentioned, this gives you Overguard, which will allow him to tank a bit more. This is basically an auto in-slot for all Frost builds. You're basically running this at all times. This is his best augment, like, not even close. So, yeah. Now, with his augments out the way, let's go get into the rework idea. Okay, so here we are with the rework concept. So first off, his passive. His passive, this has got to go. What I would like to do is give him the Hydroid treatment, where all of his damage, whether it's from melee, his guns, his abilities, his bullet jump, slide kick, whatever, all does cold stacks. And we make it just a specific cold stack for Frost, where he can freeze enemies like this guy in the background, right? He hard freezes like you can with Avalanche and Freeze. If we did that, that would fix so many of his issues immediately. And I'll explain why in a second. So, moving on to his first ability. So, his first ability, basically the freeze, I kind of like this ability, conceptually. However, it's bad only because we don't see what the radius is on it. It's basically a static radius because you can't really determine what the range is. It says area damage, but it doesn't say area range. Now, first off, I don't want area damage. I want the full contact damage on every enemy it hits, and allow us to see the range, and let the range just straight up scale with Snow Globe. Make it a 1-to-1. So, for example, base range on Snow Globe is 5 meters. Make this 5 meters. And with our 60 range on that build that I showed you, we get it up to 8 meters. 8 meters. So, if you did that, 8 meters, instant freeze, this would become a way better ability. It's basically an instant CC on the enemies in front of you. Obviously, you have the the exceptions like the Exilises and the mini bosses and stuff like that appear. But other than that, yeah, that's how this ability should work. Now let's get into the augment for this ability and the concept for that for the rework. So I like the idea of being able to give your teammates the ability to use cold damage on all their their weapons and stuff like that. However, we got to grant them Frost's passive on that ability. So if we basically give them Frost's passive, so all their damage, all their whatever, can apply cold stacks and stuff like that, and they get the hard freeze that Frost gives them, which again, this is only that if the Frost allows you to get this ability to hard freeze them. You actually have a reason to consider this, especially in Steel Path, because now you're hard CCing everyone that you run into if you start shooting them long enough, right? So yes, I think if you did that, you actually have a consideration to run that augment. getting on to his next ability, Ice Wave. This is really bad. This is really bad. And my rework idea for this is to essentially copy Reeve onto this. Now, how do we copy Reeve? Well, Reeve has the ability to do a percentage damage. Now, why would we give this thing a percentage damage? Well, that way it has an ability to infinitely scale into the highest level content. And, well, how we make that is so Reeve at base, will do like, say, like 40% of an enemy's, health. That's as long as they are, enthralled. If they're not enthralled with his first ability, then they don't get that damage. But say with our, 200% strength, with blind rage and whatnot, we get that up to 80%. If we basically copy that one for one from Reeve, we apply it here, then we have a really good ability, Ice Wave. Now, how do we get that 80%? Well, let's say we drop it down to half that, okay? Now, the reason why we want to drop it down to half is that we get that 80% only if they're frozen. If they're frozen solid, then you get the 80%. If they're not frozen, then so we drop that down to half, so it's like 40%, right? I think that sounds fair. So basically, you have to freeze the enemy that you want to use Ice Wave on to get that massive damage, right? That makes a lot of sense. And, yeah. And you could maybe argue, give it maybe some knockback. That's not really necessary, but it's an idea. So, make it percentage based, and you get a really high damage base on whether or not they're frozen. Obviously, if you build him with enough strength, you could get it up to 100%, but that's how that would work. And also, we keep the slow for enemies who are stuck in it. They'll build up that slow, so they keep getting frost stacks and stuff like that. That's not really necessary. If you wanted to, you could get rid of that, that slow aura that comes with it from the augment. And what we do is we replace the augment, so enemies who are affected by Ice Wave have the chance to drop energy orbs or health orbs or ammo and stuff like that. Basically, making him a pseudo, farm frame with that augment could be really good. Now, I'm not saying he's going to become the king of farming. That's not what I want. Obviously, you can make that percentage based off of like strength. So, like, say it has like a 10% chance to work, and so if enemies who are killed by it or affected by it have a 20% chance to drop whatever, or basically just 50%. What I don't know what you would get that to work, but basically make it so they drop shit when they're affected or killed by Ice Wave. I think that's the best way to make it work, because we have to find a way to be able to really deal with this drain, because the fact that this is 50 is ridiculous. To be honest, freeze should be like a 10 drain minimum. Like, there's no reason this thing isn't like 10, and obviously if you blind rage, we get that up to 15. And so right here, if we take freezes drain, so it's that 25, with blind rage, we get that 38. These abilities actually start to seem somewhat useful from the stuff that I've just said. So basically, you get the freeze for the damage for this. This doesn't cost that much to cast. This can get you your energy back. Basically, that's how the loop I want with these two abilities to work. So that way you're actually able to use these and consistently, not just like the occasional, like, once every now and then. You want to keep using them. Snow Globe. Okay, Snow Globe needs a rework. First off, we get that immediate freeze for enemies who just walk into it based on, power strength of the percentage of the freeze. The slow, to be honest, you can keep that if you want, but I would rather have the immediate freeze, because the moment someone steps in Snow Globe, it's over for them, right? You do not want them to be in your Snow Globe. There's no reason you want someone to be inside your Snow Globe. So, one of the things that we want to do is actually buff the Snow Globe. And how we buff it? Give it more health. The fact that its base health is 5,000 is absurd to me. It should be at base already sitting at 10,000, if not 15,000, and with blind rage, so we get that basically 200% increase. Going up to 20 to 30k. That would be a healthy position for it, and it actually scales into Steel Path, or at least for a decent bit, right? It's not going to go to level cap, but it'll be useful in Steel Path. So he's actually somewhat viable there, and that's what we want from this, right? Now, Avalanche, this literally doesn't need to be touched at all. This is perfect. This is a perfect ability. The augment is perfect. You don't even have to touch this. So yeah, that's essentially it. That's the rework idea for Frost. So for the fast recap, basically making it so all his damage can freeze, and it can hard freeze like these guys. Making freeze, get rid of that the AoE damage, and just make it the raw freeze, and you apply it to a radius. That'll work. Ice Wave, make it percentage based on their health, damage. So if they're frozen, they take double that. Again, with my build right now, it'd say that the health damage at base would be 40%, then it would go up to 80%, but the 80% is only if they're frozen. That'd be good. Increase Snow Globe's health by, double or triple. And Avalanche does not need to be touched. After that, we have basically the quintessential Frost rework slash buff. And we don't even have to really change anything outside of, some statistic changes. The biggest change to this ability, or to Frost, would literally be his passive, because nothing else really gets altered. It's the same abilities, just, you just kind of alter their stats. The only thing that's really brand new would be his passive. And with that being said, I bid you guys adieu. I hope you guys enjoyed the rework idea. If you got some issues with it, you got some complications, or maybe you like it, tell me in the comments. Anyways, thanks for watching.